we going? Yes, we are. Oh, of course, as soon as I go live, the dogs start to bark. Hi guys, and welcome to Monday Motivation. I was talking to some of the girls, excuse the dog in the background. It's inevitable as soon as I go live that someone will come to the door or whatever. Anyway, welcome to a wild, windy and wet Waihi on your Monday morning. I was talking to some of my girls in one of the programs yesterday about how, now that we're more than halfway through the year, it's probably a good time to look at those goals that we started off with in 2021 and see how we're going. Did we start off really well and we're on track and we're still going well? Or did we start off roaring and then gradually we've petered off and now we've totally plateaued or gone back to what we were doing before? So I thought it was a good time to evaluate, to reset some goals for the end of the year, because we've still got 5 months. We can achieve an awful lot in terms of wellness and fitness and health with 5 months of being consistent with both our nutrition intake and our exercise. But so what people want to do is when they reset goals and they come to see me, the first thing they want to do is get a new plan. So they want a new food plan to get them to that goal. Except what happens is I give them a new food plan and they don't stick to the bloody new food plan. It lasts 2 weeks at the most, and then they're back to doing what they were doing before, which made me think now was a good time to perhaps go back to basics and think a little bit more about how we're eating rather than what we're eating. So I pulled up 4 things to talk about, and the first thing I wanted to talk about is really retuning in with your hunger and starting to only eat from a place where you are physically hungry. How many times in a day do you eat because it's just habit, because it's socially expected of you? You're, out with coffee or out for drinks, or you're in the lunchroom at work, somebody's bought that slice in, you're not hungry, you've already had your lunch, but somehow you find yourself hoovering it up. Or you are in the supermarket, you did the right thing, you had lunch before you went, and you still find yourself grabbing a chocolate bar at the checkout, which is just habit. So there's all of those reasons we eat. We eat when we're bored, we eat when we're lonely, we eat when we're sad. I used to be a great eater, a great procrastination eater. I would eat when I didn't want to do something. When I had a job or a task I didn't want to do, I'd find myself with my head in the cupboard simply to put off doing it. So there are all kinds of reasons that we look to food that are nothing to do with hunger. And I want you to remember that true hunger is not an emotion, it's a sensation. It's a physical sensation that starts in your body, often in your stomach, and your stomach gives out a hormone called ghrelin that sends a signal to your brain that says, hey, we need refueling, it's time to eat now. Now, sometimes that goes wrong and there can be hormonal issues and other things that I can talk to you about that may cause you to feel like you are physically hungry all of the time. But for most of us, we're not really tuned into that true hunger. If you are truly hungry, then an apple or some broccoli or a bowl of salad or a bowl of lentils will solve the hunger, because what you're wanting is fuel for your body. But if it's an emotional urge or a craving, then it has to be the chocolate chip cookie or the ice cream or whatever the thing is, and that has nothing to do with true hunger. So I would love you to keep a little bit of a journal and notice when you are truly hungry and it's time to eat. And I don't want you to get over hungry so that then you overeat, because that's the other thing that happens, is we ignore that hunger signal all day and put it to one side because it's not convenient to eat because we're working or whatever we're doing, and then we get home in the evening and we binge eat and we eat a huge amount, and all of those calories coming in one hit in the evening ain't going to be burned off because you're just going to go to bed unless you've got a very active new boyfriend, you are not going to burn that stuff off, okay? So it's really, I would encourage you to keep a journal to learn to tune into your true hunger and start to eat when you are hungry. And notice those other times when you go to eat that you're not hungry, and get curious and write a little note. What is it? Is it loneliness? Is it boredom? Is it putting off doing something? Is it just habit? And then we can look at those things and how we solve those feelings, or learn to cope with or lean into those feelings without using food to try and buffer them or get rid of them. So that is my number one. Then what kind of goes along with that is the other thing that I teach, which is eat to 80% full. And that comes from that Okinawan Hara Hachi Bu, which means basically eat to here. So you need to tune into your body. You need to learn to stop eating before you are stuffed full and you have overeaten. And if you imagine when you do that, those extra calories that you don't have room to do anything with right now, they're just going to spill over and be stored as fat. They're just going to go into your fat cells to be stored for later. So it's listening to when you are hungry, and it's learning to stop before you're overfull. So that's my number one. Number two is always plan your food ahead of time. Now, I get so much kickback from this one and so much resistance from this one. People hate doing it. They don't want to have to plan their food. They want to be spontaneous. But generally being spontaneous has not got you to your goal thus far. So planning your food ahead of time is probably one of the best gifts that you can give to your future self, because the choices that you make today are going to be reflected in next week, next month, next 3 months, next year, in terms of fueling your body with food that it can use to make new cells, and fueling your body in such a way that you are perhaps in a slight deficit, so that you can use some of those stored calories that we were talking about earlier. So plan your food ahead of time, make your plan realistic, plan foods that you actually like, plan foods according to your day. Where are you going to be? Are you going to be eating out? Are you going to be in a social situation where somebody else is providing the food? And sometimes I end up with 3 choices on my plan, and I don't know how my day's going to go or which one I'm going to choose, but at least I've got an idea. And I have chosen that with my thinking brain. I've chosen that plan with my brain that is conscious, that is engaged, and that wants to get me to my goals. Not waiting until the last minute and then letting the primitive brain, what I call your labrador brain, jump in and make a poor food choice for you, or get yourself in a situation where you are over hungry and the only thing that is there is a pie or a donut or whatever it is. So please plan ahead of time, make it realistic. I do mine every morning, and then make a pact with yourself that you will follow through and do what you say you are going to do. Remember, we always come back to that. Successful people, whether it's success in terms of well-being or success in their career or success in their sports, they always do what they say they are going to do. They follow through, and that's what I want you to practice doing. And it's not always going to go according to plan. It doesn't. Life sucks. We are human, and 50% of the time things go wrong. But if you can give yourself the best possible crack at it by planning ahead of time, you have so much more chance of actually getting to where you want to be in 5 months' time. I promise you. So that's number 2. Number 3, I've been thinking about this one a little bit. Only eat when you're sitting down, with a couple of provisos. So eating when you're sitting down means that you can't put your head in the fridge and graze. You can't stand at the cupboard with your hand in the cookie jar. You can't pick at the kids' food when you're standing making them something at the bench. You don't eat more calories while you're tasting things while you're cooking than is in your actual meal. You don't eat more calories when you're putting things away. The couple of provisos I have are try not to eat in your car. Because when you're eating sitting down, I want you to be focused on your food with no distractions. I want you to get pleasure and joy from that food, not it to be something that you're stuffing down your neck at 200 miles an hour, okay? Because I want your brain to actually be able to acknowledge the fact that you have eaten your food. So try not to eat in your car. I know there are some exceptions to this, but try and love yourself enough to take that extra 5 or 10 minutes to eat your breakfast before you get in the car, or have your lunch before you leave for that meeting, or have some afternoon tea before you get on the motorway heading home. The other thing I want you to do is sit at the table and stop those distractions of TV, scrolling on your phone, looking at Facebook, or reading a magazine while you eat. I want you to actually focus on eating your food, and the pleasure and the joy that you get from your food. I find that having that rule in my house has eliminated a ton of what I call blats. What are blats? Blats are bites, licks, and tastes. And those bites, licks, and tastes can add up to way more food than we need. They can be why we're overeating. People often send me their food plans, which look fabulous. And I'm like, yes, you're doing it. And they're like, yes, I know, but I'm not getting the result. And they're not getting the result that they're after because of all that unconscious eating they're doing when they're standing at the fridge, when they're cooking, when they're putting things away. So try and make that a rule for yourself, that you sit down and you concentrate. It's very hard to do. I've done years of sitting watching bloody Shortland Street while I eat dinner. I've done years of working on my computer through my lunch, or having a book open and studying while I do my lunch. Try not to do that. We can all find time. We can all make time to sit down for 5, 10, 15 minutes and actually allow ourselves to enjoy our food. So that's number 3. Now, number 4 actually ties in with number 3, but number 3 was getting a bit long. And number 4 is to make sure that every single meal has a start and a finish. So that means you have to put food on your plate, bring it to the table and sit down, and that is the start. You eat your food slowly, you chew your food, you swirl your food around your taste buds so that you enjoy the texture and the taste of every single mouthful. You put your fork or your spoon down between mouthfuls. You might even want to do the old Weight Watchers trick of chewing each mouthful 20 times. I have to say I don't do that. But don't bolt your food down at 900 miles an hour. Take time with it. And if you make that rule that every meal has to have a start and a finish, it can serve you really well when you're out with friends, at a friend's house, or you're sitting enjoying afternoon drinks at a grazing table. Because it means that you take your plate, you look at the available food, you choose the things that you love in an appropriate serving size, you put it onto your plate, you sit down, you savor that plate full of food, and then you finish, you put your plate away and you walk away from the food. That saves my butt, because Friday night when I've had a couple of drinks, I will keep grazing. I will keep doing rice crackers and hummus and carrot sticks and hummus and whatever else is on the table with hummus. Luckily, I can no longer do the cheeses and things like that, which has saved my butt a bit. But having that start and that finish rule has helped take out so much mindless and unconscious eating that I really didn't even know that I was doing. And so it helps me to maintain, it helps me not to end the day feeling bloated and unable to sleep, but I can feel, light and healthy and good about myself. So it stops me having that awful food hangover or, food brain fog or food muscle and joint aches from eating too much of the wrong stuff. So, with your meal, serve an appropriate amount. Remember, your stomach is the size of your fist when it's empty. It stretches to the capacity of about 1.5 liters. It doesn't need more than that. You don't need more than that. We think we need to eat so much more than we do. And so often we're eating the same amount as our husbands or our teenage sons. And we just don't need to do that, or our adult sons. We don't need to do that. We are women. We don't have the muscle mass they do. We don't burn off the same amount of calories as they do. And that might be tough and it might be disappointing, but that's the truth. That's the truth. So serve an appropriate serving size. Eat it slowly. Take time to acknowledge and enjoy the pleasure of eating and the joy of eating in the right circumstances. It's not stuffing it down and the joy of eating becoming a binge, because that isn't really the joy of eating. That's trying to fill an emotional hole and you don't even taste the stuff. So take your time, enjoy every bite. And this can be really hard for people to do. It can take weeks of practice to slow down the time you are taking to eat your meal, so that your brain can acknowledge the fact that you have eaten, you are full, you do not need to keep going. And sometimes you get to that point before you've finished everything on your plate, and that can be a mind fuck too, because we've been taught to eat everything on our plates. But sometimes we do the harahachi boo and we get to 80% and we continue eating just because it's there. Or we continue eating for comfort, really, even though we don't realize it, because emotionally it tastes nice and it feels good. So, yes, surround yourself with your family and eat in a pleasurable environment. That's not TV, that's not reading something. It's not the same. It's not the phone. You can have good conversations. You can talk about your day, but you savor the food and you allow your brain and your body to be nourished by it. And I think this is something I was thinking about earlier when I was writing this, that we, in the old days, we always said grace, or maybe you didn't, but the generation before you did. So before each meal, I don't know, in my house, it was, for what we are about to receive, may the Lord make us truly thankful. So you just took that moment to appreciate that you were lucky enough to have food on your plate, that God or the universe was providing you with nourishment and fuel for your body. And maybe it just made you take a moment to also think about where your food comes from. And when I say thinking about where your food comes from and being grateful for it and acknowledging it, I don't mean pack and save, right? I actually mean just take a minute to think about who grew or provided that food that you are eating. Where has it come from? Because I can tell you, if you actually get a little bit deep and you start to do that on a regular basis and you start to get a bit curious about where your food comes from, instead of just accepting that it's in a packet and you grab it from the supermarket, put it in a trolley, put it in the car, bring it home, shove it in the microwave, if you start to actually think about where it came from and maybe the effect of that food on not only your body, but on the planet, and therefore on your children's or your grandchildren's future, you may find that it starts to change your attitude towards what you eat and how you eat. So that, my friends, is my sermon for today. I hope that it was useful. Please do pop any questions that you have into the, I was going to say the chat, but that's Zoom, isn't it? Into the comments below. Have a fabulous week. Send me your questions through for next week. I look forward to seeing you then. My next program will open in September. So if you would like to join me for 12 weeks of coaching, then just watch out, join up for the emails on the website, watch out. And I am going to put today, I've got a new 7-day plant-based, whole food plant-based food plan, and I'm going to pop that onto the website today so that you guys can have access to it between now and my next program starting. So I guess the message is, don't just think about what you eat, but think about how you are eating and where what you are eating has come from. Thanks, guys. Have a great week. Bye.